Welcome aboard. This is the Admiral's Almanac, your leadership life connection, bringing leaders from all walks of life into yours so you can take charge, improve your leadership, and improve your life. With the wit and wisdom of your host, Rear Admiral Gary Hall.
And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm Gary Hall, your host of the Admiral's Almanac, where we navigate leadership in all aspects of our lives. Now, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out. If you'd like to have your questions answered on the Admiral's Almanac, on leadership, faith, the Navy, or other, record your question as a voice memo on your phone and send it to theadmiralsalmanac@gmail.com, and you may hear your question answered on a future episode. You're in for a real treat today. We have Admiral Sonny Masso, citizen sailor, musician, I'll say hero, storyteller, naval historian, and man of deep faith, the son of an Estonian war refugee. He's been navigating leadership his entire life. Welcome aboard, Admiral Sonny Masso.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And to the audience, thank you for listening in. We appreciate it.
All right. May I call you Sonny? I've only known you
please.
for 20 years or so.
Yeah, that's not enough time. You call me Excellency. No, Sonny's fine.
There we go. Hey, Sonny, you're an amazing naval officer, intellectual thinker, historian, and friend, and definitely a man of faith. Where did you get your start? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Whittier, California, and Richard Nixon, you might have heard of him. He was from Yorba Linda and Whittier, and then I moved in the middle of my life to San Clemente, California, which is exactly halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego on the beach, and at the north gate of Camp Pendleton.
Oh, wow. So was your father in the military, or was there any military in your background?
Yes. My father from Estonia and a great man, fought in the Russian front as a 15-year-old, if you can even comprehend that, and then came over, went to become a guard at Nuremberg for the Nazi war trials, and then came to the United States, served in the Army for a few years during the Korean War. So he did, I think, 30 months. But my parents divorced, and my mother married a Naval Academy graduate, 3-war veteran, a Navy captain. And so I had military and patriotism embedded in my soul my entire life.
Okay, so you weren't always this powerful Navy admiral. So in high school, did you participate in sports or anything that would shape you?
I did. I participated in everything, in student government, in volunteer service with my church. I played sports. I played baseball and football. And I was active in almost everything you could be active in as a high school student at San Clemente High School, a phenomenal school, great education. And I'm still immensely close to so many of my wonderful classmates.
Well, those are all foundational experiences to build leadership and service, not only to your country, but to your community and your family. Was there JNROTC at your high school?
Absolutely. There, in fact, my stepfather, Captain Joseph Gould, was the professor of naval science, and his assistant was First Sergeant Ed Peel, Piel, First Sergeant of Marines, and also a 3-war veteran. And I served in the junior ROTC for 3 years, and we just had a really brilliant experience because my stepfather had, all his homeboys, were all on the waterfront, all his former shipmates and things. And so we were always going to sea on a destroyer for a day, or we were, and not just for a dependence cruise. I mean, we were going out there shooting guns, and it was part of the training kind of thing. So we were treated just wonderfully. And also we went to boot camp at the recruit training center in San Diego. I lost its name; it doesn't exist anymore. But we would go there over spring break, and so I just loved the Navy, and my experience in junior ROTC was way more robust than anything anybody does today because of those personal connections between my stepfather and his old shipmates, classmates, things like that.
Wow, a real shaping experience. And also, you did all that, you were on sports, and you had a part-time job?
Jack in the Box, 5 years. I'll tell you, leadership is telling a Silver Star staff sergeant who's got a part-time job to pay his truck payment to go clean the heads, and he does it. That's the leadership. But I was an assistant manager, and I was forged, in this place. And, what's ironic is your classmate, John Cruz from the 13th Company, 30-year retired colonel, fluent in Arabic. He was Secretary Danzig's military assistant, Vice President Cheney's Arabic desk officer. We were having lunch one day, and we both agreed that some of the greatest small team training that we ever experienced was in the Jack in the Box, because we had a great boss and just a wonderful experience, lots of responsibility, no micromanagement. We knew what if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. Okay. We learned that pretty profoundly there. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Well, that's all, I think for our young people, our young listeners out there, that participating in sports, in clubs, and student government, and part-time jobs is a great foundation you're going to build on your entire life. So you're a SoCal kind of guy, and you wind up going to college across the country. Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Mississippi on a Navy ROTC scholarship. I had family that I love and actually was in a lot of communications with several of them in the last 24 hours, in fact, but very close to my family, a wonderful family. And I just I wanted, Archie Manning was really kind of the influence that really sealed the deal for me with Ole Miss. I was accepted at a number of schools, not the Naval Academy, I might add. That's a great disappointment that I still haven't gotten over, but back in the day, USC, UCLA, Texas A&M, there were a lot of places I could have gone. But I chose Ole Miss because of my dear family, but also because of Archie Manning, and I never regretted it.
Absolutely. So what was your major, college?
History.
Okay, well, that's come around to current day. So you went to Ole Miss, ROTC, scholarship. Did you have any leadership experiences as an ROTC midshipman?
I was the drill team commander my junior year, and I was in the drill team up until my junior year, where I was the commander, and then I was the first set battalion commander, midshipman commander. So I ran the battalion for the first semester until Christmas time.
All right. So again, the building blocks of leadership, as I said, you've been navigating leadership your entire life. So you graduate from Ole Miss, you're a history major, and that's exactly what we need in the surface warfare officer community, is more history majors.
I know. Yes. The thing is Admiral Rickover, whom I'm a huge fan of, absolute heroic man and a profound man, Naval Academy class of 21 or 22. But he created this construct where it was called the 80-20 rule, and 80% of all midshipmen had to have technical majors. 20% could have liberal arts, and I was in that 20%. But you still had to take, a core curricula. So what that meant for us liberal artists is that we took tons of hours, 21, 23 hours. I don't think I had a semester under 19 hours the whole time I was there, because we were always having to take these science prerequisites, calculus, physics, computer science, things like that. So it wasn't really, my connection to technology wasn't, that, off kilter. And in fact, my whole life, I've been dealing in missile defense and, acoustic signal processing and things like that. If you're in the Navy, you're into technical content,
Yeah. Again, for our young listeners, you might have a history major, but you probably have what's considered a Bachelor of Science in History, and 19 hours a semester. That's not even fathomable for our students out there to take 19 hours. And so that takes a lot of passion, dedication, and commitment. So you went into the surface Navy. What was your first ship?
Paul F. Foster, DD-964, and it was the newest ship in the Navy at the time, and I was one of the very first officers to come aboard who was not a plank owner, meaning commissioned the ship. But I love that ship, and I'm still in touch with all my shipmates from there. In fact, last weekend, one of my seamen, when I was the first lieutenant, and then when I became navigator, he became a quartermaster, and then he retired and I retired him actually as a master chief, and I'm still in touch. Michael Harrison and Michael and Donna are dear friends, and so even and then of course the most important person in my naval career was my first chief. Bosun mate, then senior chief John Allen Eichhorn, and he rode his motorcycle to Beaupers, for my change of command, and so that ship really forged who I am today in so many ways.
No, those were great ships. The Spruance class destroyer. The only problem, I think, was the head in officer country the ship listed away from the drain. So occasionally you had a little bit of a swap going on in the officer's head.
Yeah, they had this innovation in the head, since we're speaking about it, where they would shoot with high pressure air 1 pint of water, and it just didn't get the job done sometimes.
So on the Paul F. Foster, how many did you make a deployment on?
I made two full deployments, and then a lot of short cruises. But yes, and I had some great jobs. I was first lieutenant navigator, and then ASW, and in our not because of me, but because of my people and because of the mission and luck, we won ASW ship of the Pacific Fleet. And the luck part was we were finishing an exercise, and my guys were always engaged in sonar control. And the primary mission of the ship was anti-submarine warfare. And we had a wonderful relationship with our LAMPS detachment. I had Bob Sutton was the oink of the det, and then Denny Rowley, who'd come from HAL 3, background, amazing guy, and, Face Kennedy and Bucky Walters and Rick Rui. These are just famous naval names. But we were going into the Straits of Juan de Fuca to finish, the exercise is over, we're coming in. And 3rd Fleet, Admiral McKee was on board, and we got a contact on a Victor 3. And so we just cut the cord, and instead of going into the Straits, we went after this Victor 3. And so we had a lot of ping time, literally, and we had everything. As you know, in the submarine world, there are classifications, and there's a non-sub, which there's nothing out there, and then there's a possible sub low. And then with 2 sensor detection, it's possible sub high. And then if you see a feather in the water, meaning an actual visual of a sail area or something, that's a probable that's a, what is it? Positive sub, right? So anyway, we were just having a blast, and the Admiral was a chain smoker, cigars, and of course, back in the day, everybody smoked, but maybe not you, but we all smoked, but sonar control was just, it was like a San Francisco fog, because he never left. And so when he left, he had a positive impression of us, and it was just luck and great skill by my people. But we were ASW ship of the Pacific Fleet.
Fantastic. And Admiral McKee before that was, I think, or was that before or after?
Yeah, he was at the Naval Academy.
Yeah, superintendent of the Naval Academy. Yeah, known for his cigar smoking and dirty fingernails from working on his sports car, but definitely a tremendous naval officer.
Yeah, tough guy, but I loved him. I was so motivated by his leadership example in Third Fleet, because what fleet commander gets around on the waterfront? Well, he did. He was. You never knew where that guy was going to be. His car would be driving by, or he'd be walking by. So that's leadership by walking around, and he certainly was the father of all that.
Yeah, and that still holds no matter what your occupation is. To get out there, know your people, know your job, be committed, and be interactive. It doesn't mean you're a micromanager, but there's nothing like showing that you're out there with those that you are leading. So after the Paul Foster, did you go to another ship?
I did not. I was the very first JCS intern surface warfare officer. I was selected for this program. So we had Chris Ames, your classmate, was an aviator, me, and then a guy named Jamie Jernan, and we were the first three from the class. Jamie was an S3 pilot from the class of 75. So the three of us showed up on the same day and served in different areas of the Joint Staff. And then that was a 1-year tour. And then I was brought into the Bureau to be a junior officer detailer. So I worked and at the time it was called NMPC 412, and I was the year group 78 detailer.
So as a detailer, there's some leadership challenges there, some salesmanship and others. Do you have any stories of challenges as the detailer dealing with prickly junior naval officers? I'm year group 77. My year group was 78. I was never Lieutenant Masso or aloof. I was Sonny. And so I honestly didn't have a lot. I mean, I had people that were just tired, and this type of thing from being at sea. And at the time, we weren't paid very much. I think we finally started getting some pay raises, but, we were all struggling financially, but I didn't, I had one or two, and I remember them well, that were angry, kind of guys, but mostly, and I wasn't very autocratic in that sense. Sometimes you've got to pound somebody, but if you're bringing a good record and you've got good intentions, we're going to work together to find the best job we can. And those were some hard times. And sometimes the real contentious discussions would be with your peers in the sea and shore coordinator, because nobody could go ashore until they cleared the sea coordinator. And so sometimes they wanted to push a guy back to sea. And, most of the guys I dealt with were happy to go back to sea. I mean, in a manner of speaking, if there was some method to the madness, but to be boiler officer or MPA on a 1,200-pound steamship and then go back to another one, that was one I would fight pretty hard for my guy. But we had Commander Phil Quast, and he retired as a vice admiral. But this was an amazing man. He
he came in after a 3-year command tour on Benjamin Stoddert, named after our very first Secretary of the Navy. I know you all knew that, but he did a 3-year, like 38, 39-month tour, and he was the very first James B. Stockdale Leadership Award winner, as nominated by his peers. So he didn't know anything about it. Very surprised. He got to meet the CNO and all that. But he was a guy that really cared about people. He had been a battalion officer at the Naval Academy. I want to say he went to Carroll College. I'm not really exactly sure, but he was an OCS guy. But what a leader, what a mentor, what a guy that exuded a kind of an aura, and you never wanted to disappoint him. And so everything we did was fairly collegial, just to have that good that good dialogue and stuff.
Yeah. Now he had I think, was it a twin brother or just a brother that also?
No. Harry Quast was a couple years older, maybe 3-4 year groups older. And by the way, he made flag, and he was a brilliant man himself. He was really a talented officer.
Yep. So I learned dealing with the detailer the first time, the junior officer detailer, and I called my principal the turd on the grill. My XO said, "Gary, you're doing a great job. You call the detailer. You've got the world by the tail in a downhill tug. You're going to get amazing orders." And so I called up the detailer, and he said, "You're going to be the lamps training officer at Surf Pack on the waterfront." And I said, "Wait a minute, that doesn't involve flying, does it?" "No, it doesn't." So I said, "Okay." So he, I asked for a steak, and he looked into the refrigerator and pulled out a turd and put it on the grill, and I could hear it sizzling. And after a while, he said, "Well, do you want a hamburger instead of that steak?" And I was happy to take a hamburger. So sometimes your high expectations need to be moderated by the detailer. And what I found out was that through my career, I did better with the cards I was dealt than the cards I tried to draw. And so the hamburger was an instructor pilot at the Fleet Replacement Squadron at North Island, so where I was an instructor for 3 years. But anyway, so after this tour, is that when you decided to transition to the reserves rather than staying active duty?
I think about this every day because I love the Navy so much, but I left the Navy. And frankly, it was because of my daughter, Alexis. And when I looked in her eyes, I mean, I didn't, I just, I melted, I didn't want to leave her. But that was probably the reason I got out. It wasn't about dissatisfaction. I mean, nobody could have had more interesting jobs or served with better people than I did in my career. When I went in the reserve component, I've drilled all over the United States. I've drilled in New York, Minnesota, Atlanta, San Diego, Albany, New York. I've been everywhere. And I always went for the hardest job I could. And I always did more than the minimum, and so that served me well. And plus I had a civilian job where I was working on the SQQ-89, which is the integrated ASW suite for General Electric. And I just worked for companies that kept me very current in Aegis and things like that. And so that coupled with being in operational commands really served me well in both my career as a civilian, but also as a naval officer.
I want to point out to our listeners, we've been throwing around the acronym ASW, that's anti-submarine warfare, which is a perishable skill. And I think over the past 20 years or so, focusing on wars in the Middle East, we've kind of let anti-submarine warfare fade a bit, and we're bringing that capability back because it's very, very important. So now I believe, in the reserve component, you had 9 commands, or not? You were commanding officer or head of, or
no? I was a commanding officer, and I want to say I don't know if I included my flag time because when I made flag, I I had one command, so I don't know if it was 8 and 1 or 9 and 1 equals 10, but I had a lot of command, and I had been told by a mentor of mine that I should command early and command often, and that's what I strive to do. So that's why I went to all these crazy places, because I would apply for the command wherever it was, and if you get it selected, the irony was that I lived in the DC area, and I couldn't buy a job here until I commanded the Navy Command Center as a captain.
Yeah, so I think the takeaway point is to command early and command often. And for those in civilian industry, it's take leadership responsibility early, take it often. It builds muscle. Each leadership experience builds on the next leadership experience. So we can't go through all of them, but you had the command for supporting NATO in the UK. So how'd you like that assignment?
So I loved it. And I had been in the unit that I would later command as a lieutenant commander. So when I was really prepared, I'd been in Northwood. I knew Duncan McClashen personally, he was the guy that would rent the flats out to us for, 100 days at a time and this type of thing, right on Baker Street, York. It was a great part of town, right by the Watford line and the Marylebone. And of course, we'd get off at Northwood, walk almost 2 miles, and then go down about 6 levels. But what was really cool about my tenure in command was Denby Starling was the N2, N3, and 7, and there were just amazing guys on the staff, Root Claver and guys, Gerald Burma. And so, we really, and I was working in the Missile Defense Agency, so they really, that resonated. And in fact, I met Sir Jonathan Band, and who was our commander, but then became the first Sea Lord, and Sir Alan West and that. But what we really did was, instead of having some crazy reserve organization, I went around to all the assistant chiefs of staff and chiefs of staff and said, hey, what keeps you up at night? Where are you weak? What do you need? And then I just gave them guys, and my IT guy was a guy named Mike Sanchez, and he was probably the greatest IT guy in the entire Navy. And he went in and just did all kinds of crazy good things for them. And then, of course, Denby, N2 is intelligence, N3 is operations, N7 is exercises. And so we got a little bit out of the exercise business, but we did so many things to prepare. So my guys were always in theater. They were always supporting the main command at NATO at Northwood, and we just had a blast. And we ran that command like a sports car, and it just was all the pieces fit together. It was amazing.
Well, I flip over all the cards. I then relieved Denby Starling over there in Northwood. And funny story, Denby is a very straight arrow professional guy. He said, Gary, would you like to buy my old Mercedes? And I said, sure. And he goes, there's a problem with it, though. There's an emissions problem that's going to take $500 to repair. So I can either charge you $2,000 for the car, you pay for the repair, or I'll take care of the repair and you pay me $2,500. I said, I'll pay you $2,000. I'll take the car as is. Later, he found out I took it to the inspector and said, I need this inspected. It's having problems with the emission. And also, I can't get anybody in the passenger seat. Can you fix the passenger seat? Well, in the passenger seat were 3 cases of Budweiser beer. And so the beer was gone. The car passed inspection. Later, Denby called me a son of a gun for cheating the system. And he said, so you use bribes to get ahead? I said, whatever it takes. So anyway,
he was a fascinating guy. He had a lot of float command, a carrier, but he was an NFO, and then he became a pilot. And that just wasn't really done back. It was very rare for that to occur. But I love working for him. I loved the whole staff. I got close to the Germans and the Brits and the guys from the Netherlands. It was really I was like in my own. I'm an extrovert anyway, and I never met a stranger. And being Estonian, that was huge too. That was a big deal. To some of the other people in the command.
Yeah, our deputy was a 3-star German, and he said, "I'm an unusual German. I have a sense of humor." I never saw it, but he said he had it. So, all right, and the reserve unit that supported us was awesome. So, was it there that you then went to command the Navy's command center at the Pentagon?
Actually, no. That was afterwards. I just made captain, and I applied for the hardest command I could possibly find, which was the Navy Command Center, and I got the job. But I had 19 captains in the unit, and I was the junior captain, but I was the commanding officer.
Interesting. So again. Leadership, sometimes you have to lead up. You have to lead those that are, whether it be the Silver Star staff sergeant cleaning the restrooms at Jack in the Box, or leading the older captains on the command center. And so I'm sure there were many challenges there. But a lot happened in the world while you were at the command center. Didn't we have an EP-3 kind of like spy plane incident?
We had a ton of things happen on that in that 2-year time frame. We had Egypt Air, we had TWA 800, and when these planes crash, what the Navy's role is to map the debris field and recover the black box. And so to that end, you're bringing in the grasp or the grapple. These are deep submergent recovery kinds of diving vehicles, ships. And in fact, I think I think Admiral Sutton came out for one of those. And of course, the sea state was 7 or so. And it was just really an arduous time. But we also had the EP-3 collision with the Chinese aircraft. We had a top officials exercise, which was huge, and very big muscle mover in our pathway. We had the USS Greenville came and did an emergency blow and struck a Japanese fishing or school ship or something, tour ship, and caused some casualties in that. It just went on. We had the Vieques, Kevin Green, Admiral Kevin Green was in Vieques, and all heck was breaking loose with that, as the good people of Puerto Rico, rightfully so, wanted this land back. But of course, it was one of our live ranges, very important to us in training. And of course, there was a big tipping point. And so we sent this 1-star, and I remember we had the switch on, and the whole command center could hear this, the dialogue, and just to see the brilliant leadership of him. But it just went on and on. We had 14 or 15 no notice crisis action team responses that my folks did. But the big thing in that time frame was that we got a new CNO, Admiral Vern Clark, and he wanted to reorganize the Pentagon. And so he brought in a vice admiral named Denny McGinn, phenomenal officer and leader. He was our N7, and then in the N70 was Dan Bowler, another great officer, and great. His father Tom and his brother Tom were Naval Academy legends as well. But what they wanted to do is to take all of the post major command captains that were standing battle watch command in the Navy Command Center, and they put them and distributed them around the organization. And so my boss at the time was Tim Keating, and he was like, "Oh shit, what do we do?" And that's not how he behaved. But the question was, what can your people do to help us? And so basically, we started standing all of the battle watch captain watches. We were standing 30% of them prior to this. And so the question was, well, how do you stand them all? And I said, well, they can't be captains because, we only had 19 captains, but we had, 30 commanders, and we had 35 lieutenant commanders, and we had another 25 lieutenants. And just make the board rigorous. We'll do an oral or whatever you want to do to prove that they know what they're supposed to do. And it really worked out. And to this day, these billets are still served by select reserves. But some of these guys were, TAOs on cruise, tactical action officers on cruisers, and very talented, the aviators were brilliant. So we were able to stand all those watches. And of course, then we had the 9/11 event, which is probably the cornerstone, and it was a month before my normal rotation out of the command.
So that shaped us all. Are you comfortable talking about that day?
Yeah, I am. It's everyone knows what happened on that day. American Flight 77 was headed from Dulles to, I think, Los Angeles, got turned around Ohio. The pilot happened to be in our unit the year before, a guy named Chick Burlingame. And Chick was a Naval Academy 71 graduate, great guy. And I think he was murdered, and then, the flight was actually flown by one of the terrorists. But the irony is that, the president of the class of 78, Ken Waldy, I was his detailer. He was on the plane. Wilson Flagg and his wife, Bud Flagg, and his wife were on board. So it was kind of a family affair, if you could, in some sense of irony. But and I happened to be with Phil and Harry Quast. They probably saved my life because I was outside the door when the plane came in and smacked, right inside the Navy Command Center. And so, we talked about earlier Rear Admiral Harry Quast and Vice Admiral Phil Quast. But we went in and of course, it was, I think the teaching point was, we lost 34 people. You can only imagine what might have happened in that setting. 20,000 pounds of fuel, heat, hot, smoke, fire, death, screaming, this type of thing. The sensory overload was immense because you smelled it, you felt it, you saw it, you heard it. And these are people that, when you look around, it's not a room full of strangers, it's a room full of friends. And so, some of the sights were pretty horrific. And of course, the Pentagon is not like a ship or, that does not have damage control gear, because I think, as most of our audience might know, every person on a Navy ship is a firefighter, is a damage control specialist. And we train for that, whether that's your real job or not. You grab a hose, you go do these things. So, we exhausted anything we had. Every 50 feet or every 100 feet was a fire extinguisher that would go off, and it'd be finished in 30 seconds. And what was more horrific than the voluminous screams were when the screams dissipated, and you knew that life was being defeated. But we had, there was a lot of bravery shown that day. There was a lot of people living on the edge between panic and doing their jobs. And I don't think anybody that was there is judgmental about how people might have behaved, but I certainly thought I might die that day, and was ready to do that. But thankfully, that it wasn't my time. But I'm willing to answer specific questions. I don't really know how to,
Well, weren't you instrumental in helping calm down some people that were survivors?
I did. One thing that was interesting was this was a new part of the Pentagon, and so it was kind of nuclear hardened in a manner of speaking. And so these windows, the adrenaline of the people in the upper floors, because where fire and smoke travel, they punched through these windows, and the entire window unit, came out, and I don't know that could be replicated without the adrenaline. It's like the story of the 100-pound woman lifts the car up, to get her baby out or something. But with all that said, people were jumping out of the windows. And so, we were, we organized, and I was a leader in that, catching them as they came out of the window. And then as people came out of came out of the building, we directed them to first aid. And yes, there were some people that, you just said, hey guys, this is going to, your fear and being in this fetal position isn't contributing, and not in a mean spirited way, but just, hey, okay, gather yourself, take a deep breath, get back in the game, and people did.
Well, that is brute force leadership, having the basis of leading people, of caring for people, and then in a horrific incident, having all those muscle memories come to play, and leading people, telling them what to do, helping them out, consoling, comforting. Every aspect of leadership was required. So then a month later, you rolled the command. When were you selected for flag?
Actually, a month later, I was the chief of staff for Commander Task Group 150 in Ras El Tin, Egypt. But I put on my BDUs, my battle dress uniform, and went out in the desert, which it really helped me recover, because it was really mission focused. I was the chief of staff to Mark Milliken, Naval Academy 75, great guy, Naval Central Command. And we did a lot of important things there. I made flag in 2003. I was notified, and then I was, if you recall, in those days, it would take you forever to get promoted. So I was serving, kind of as a flag, but as a captain. But I got promoted in 2004. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then was the other, and the big surprise to me was I was on the active duty list as a reserve guy instead of the reserve active status list. I was on the active duty list, and all of my jobs and all of my time was continuous as a flag officer on active duty.
Excellent. What were some of your favorite assignments as a flag officer?
Well, I like all my assignments, and the reason why is I love people. And so being on the waterfront, I mean, that's what gets your blood flowing, and, and all that. And I was responsible for ship maintenance and repair. And we had this big enterprise construct going on. And I know you were very much a leader in that, working for Admiral Nathman, but I was in the surface warfare enterprise. Predominantly, I worked the engineering side as a history guy, and I think we did okay. But I was the vice commander at Surface Forces Command in San Diego, and I worked for Tim LaFleur, Vice Admiral LaFleur, and Vice Admiral Etnier. And then I was my next job was Assistant Deputy CNO for Manpower Personnel Training and Education, and I was the first uniform guy to do that. I was usually in a senior executive service, but Vice Admiral Harvey, who was the chief of naval personnel, brought me in because I had some background in IT, and we were doing a kind of a shotgun marriage between manpower personnel and training and education, bringing this enterprise together. And so there were lots of different things we were doing in that merger. And then finally, I was really blessed by being the chief or commander, Navy Personnel Command, deputy chief of naval personnel. And I led the command and selection boards and all that, and officer enlisted community management, placement, distribution, all of that in Millington, Tennessee.
Well, that was a perfect assignment for you for being an extrovert, and also with the dynamic variety of assignments as a reserve component officer. You probably knew more about the Navy than any other Navy leader. And now, not only did you lead all these things, but you were a friend and mentor to your peers, because I know I came to you many times with questions on career or Navy or life, and you were a tremendous peer mentor. So, so you had, we wrap up our careers and go on into industry and build on leadership roles that we've had. But now, through this process, you've always been a man of faith. I'm sure 9/11 also deepened that faith. Did it have an effect on your faith life?
Well, it's hard to be a person of faith and not have an experience like that, underscore, what that stands for. But I will tell you, and it's really funny. And someday, if you're interested, I'll send it to you. But I wrote, it was the National Day of Prayer in March of 2002. And I was asked to, put a few things together. So I'm sitting on this is like a joke, there was a priest, a rabbi, a naval officer, I gave my remarks, and the remarks were called Showtime. And the metaphor of Showtime is simply this. If you presume that you're trained as a military professional, if you presume that, you're a person of faith, then, you have to behave in that manner, and so, and I was, I think, I don't want to overstate it, but, death was in the air, it just was. And so, that was, it was impactful, but I've had a faith my whole life, and I've been driven by two scriptures that are my most favorite passages. And I speak to these passages with humility, not with arrogance. I'm the last guy who should be arrogant. But with that said, in Luke chapter 12, verse 48, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. So I learned that. I memorized that as like a second grader, and then but the one that really resonates the most to me is from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, which is, and then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." And I really do. In my faith, I want to be in the game. I don't want to be on the bench. I don't care if I'm the quarterback or the center or the wide receiver. I just want to be on the field to play, and I want to be an asset to my Lord, and so those were very impactful to me before I even ever came into the Navy or junior ROTC or anything. And that came from, my family and my faith growing up.
Well, as we say, God doesn't have any grandchildren. I'm sorry for parents that say, well, I'll let my child choose as they grow. No, you need to plant the seeds of faith in those lessons. Well, you certainly were called, and you certainly did say, "Here I am, Lord." And also an evangelical advertisement. You then converted to Catholicism late in life, and as I did, and we're both good Catholics, and that's what bad Catholics call each other.
So there's this. I love the Indigo Girls. I'm like the only guy that has been to see them about 18 times, and when you go to that concert, there's no waiting for the men's room. Okay, but they had a song called "Southtime" and "Springtime in the Southland," and there's a lyric in the song that says, "When God made me born a Yankee, He was teasing," and I that resonates with me in this choice, because I always felt like I was a Catholic even when I wasn't, and so I just made it official. So,
yeah. As I said, when I married my bride, who is Catholic, I said, know when I look back, I was Catholic all the time. I just wasn't sacramentalized until later in my life. And for those that are wondering, the light is on. Ask questions about the Catholic faith and from somebody you trust. And I think it'll make a difference in your life. And of course, both of us are devoted to Mary and the Rosary, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, I have my scapular on right here. I've got all whatever. It's here somewhere. There you go. So yes, you're right.
So what are you doing now with the historical? Talk to me about the Navy Historical Foundation and what's going on there.
Well, first of all, I love the Naval Historical Foundation. We've got one of the best boards you can imagine. We have Admiral Fox Fallon, and our mission really is to preserve and commemorate Navy history, basically, and then our vision is, we commemorate, educate, use Navy history and understanding the importance of sea power. And we have a lot of products that we push. We have an annual, we have a great magazine called Pull Together that kind of celebrates Navy history. We have a weekly missive called Thursday Tidings, just went out today, celebrating astronauts, Navy astronauts, which is a cool topic. We have author chats. We do book reviews. In fact, my grandson, Apollo, who's 7 years old, and I are working on a book review of this great Navy Institute proceedings or press book called Cats in the Navy. So he loves cats. So we're going to do this together. You'll look for it in a couple of weeks, but we do oral histories. But the big thing we do is second Saturday webinars. And we just did the Phil Belisle report that was legendary about 12 years ago. Next month, we're doing civilian control of the military, 2 SecNavs, and an author of a great book called Commanding Despot Leaders, And so anyway, we've done about 3 years of this, and some of this content is just exceptional. So I love doing it.
So how do we find out about the second Saturdays? Where do we go if we're not members of the foundation?
Well, NavyHistory.org is our website, and then our Thursday Tidings. But if you'd like to join, it's $50 annually, $1,000 for a life membership. But we push a lot of digital content, and we, it's advertised pretty prodigiously. And of course, I have a mailing list of about 400 people, some of whom are not members, and so they get it that way. But if you're wondering, it's called Second Saturday because that's the day. It's always at 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time on Saturday. They go for about an hour and a half. And I just love doing them. We've done some great topicality. We've featured Navy heroes like Sam Gravely. We did one on comparing Horatio Hornblower with Jack Aubrey, and we had John Lehman on that. We've had secretaries of the Navy. We bring in the program we did on 9/11, for example. We had the vice chief we had Fox Fallon. We had Bob Natter, who was at the time United States Atlantic Fleet, and we had CNO Vern Clark. That's one for the ages, to talk about not what happened in the command center, but to talk about what did our Navy do on, in response to 9/11. And it's a great homage to some real heroes in our Navy.
Well, history shaped me, and as I was telling some friends recently, when I was in the 7th grade, somebody recommended, because I loved math and science, recommended the book Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. And I was amazed at the life of an indentured servant, mathematician, and then the father of modern maritime navigation. And so that's the theme of, then when I went to the Naval Academy, that inspired me to go that route. And at the Naval Academy, I was put in advanced leadership second semester. And so I've been navigating life, navigating leadership. So, Sonny, we've had a great time here. Do you have any final thoughts to summarize your thoughts on leadership?
Well, I have a couple, and it begins. There was a book by Robert Timberg called "The Nightingale Song," and it starts with this story about a nightingale, and if a nightingale never hears the voice of another nightingale, it'll never make a sound. But the very first time it hears this voice, it makes the most beautiful music. And so I think in leadership, you need to find your voice. And I think your voice is a reflection on, are you an introvert, an extrovert? How do you show compassion? How do you show energy? How do you become an energizer? And there are many ways to lead. And there are many ways to serve. And if you're a servant leader and you find your voice and you're able to really communicate that, then that expression will resonate with subordinates, and you'll get the desired effect. And that would be the way I would leave it.
Well, thank you very much, Sonny. You are a tremendous storyteller, a man of faith, a leader, a man of experience, still influencing young, medium, and old folks through the Naval History Foundation and through your lessons that you've learned from Southern California to Ole Miss to 9/11 in the Pentagon to today. So thank you very much for being on the show today.
Well, you're too kind. Thank you for all your programs. I haven't missed any, and every time I listen, and hopefully this will be one of those times, I feel like I'm a better person for having spent that time. So thank you for this.
Thank you for listening to the Admiral's Almanac and spending a fruitful hour with Admiral Sonny Masso. And until we meet again, here's wishing you a happy voyage home.
Well, I hope that was good for you, Gary. I appreciate the time.